My mother called the police on me during my brother's promotion dinner and told them I had stolen money from the family. I was still trying to understand why she would accuse her own daughter when the country club manager walked toward our table with a file that made everyone stop talking. My name is Marissa. I am 38 years old and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had been divorced for 4 years and I had spent those years building a quiet life that my family considered ordinary. I had a steady career in financial compliance. I had a stable income and savings because I had learned that nobody was coming to rescue me. My older brother Caleb had always lived differently. He liked expensive watches and private clubs and dinners where everyone knew his name. His wife Tessa understood that world perfectly. My mother Judith adored the image they created. My father Warren was quieter and usually stayed out of arguments. When Judith invited me to Caleb's promotion dinner at the country club, I almost refused. She said it mattered that the whole family be there. She said Caleb had worked hard and she wanted one evening without old family tension. I believed her because some part of me still wanted to believe my family wanted me around for reasons that had nothing to do with what I could provide. The club sat outside Charlotte behind toll gates and manicured grounds. Inside the dining room, everything was polished and restrained. It was the kind of place where reputation mattered more than honesty because everyone had spent years building one. Judith hugged me at the entrance and immediately looked at my dress. She said I should have worn something more impressive. I told her I was comfortable. She said I always had to make a point about being practical. Caleb arrived with Tessa and introduced me to 2 people from his firm. He called me his younger sister and said I had always been the independent one. One woman asked what I did. Caleb answered before I could. He called it a nice little compliance job. My place card was at the far end of the table. Judith said it was quieter there. I knew what she meant. Everyone who mattered to Caleb was seated near him. I sat down and told myself I would stay calm. Champagne arrived before the full table had settled. Caleb ordered another bottle without looking at the price. Tessa chose an expensive appetizer and Judith encouraged everyone to order freely. When I selected a basic entry, Caleb asked whether I was saving money. I told him I was simply hungry. He laughed and said I had always been good at making cheap choices sound responsible. His friends laughed with him. I looked at Warren. He did not laugh. His phone rested beside his plate. He kept checking the screen. I asked if something was wrong. He said no too quickly. Then I noticed our waiter Andre. Whenever he approached our table, he checked a tablet before speaking. He entered something after every order and looked toward Warren. Once he spoke quietly with another employee. Warren saw them and checked his phone again. I asked if the club was having an issue. He said everything was fine. I knew he was lying. Near the middle of dinner, Judith leaned toward me. Her voice became soft. She said she needed a small favor. I asked what she meant. She told me that since I was the responsible one, I could handle the bill. I stared at her. She smiled. I asked whether she was serious. She said I could afford one evening and that I had spent years talking about being independent. Caleb looked at me and laughed. He said I could finally put all that independence to good use. Tessa did not laugh. She looked uncomfortable for the first time all evening. I looked around the table. Nobody looked surprised. They had decided I would pay before I arrived. I said I would think about it. Judith smiled with relief. I kept eating and started watching the people around me. Andre returned and checked the tablet again. Warren received a message and went pale. He stepped outside. Caleb watched him leave. Judith quietly told Caleb to stay calm. Warren returned and sat down without touching his food. I asked what was happening. He said nothing. I told him everyone seemed to know something except me. Caleb told me to stop making everything about myself. Judith said tonight was supposed to be about family. I asked why family needed secrets to celebrate a promotion. Nobody answered. Then Andre approached with the manager. Caleb stood immediately. He asked whether there was a problem with the bill. The manager said there was a problem with the membership account. Caleb said his father had been a member for more than 20 years. The manager said the account had been suspended earlier that week. Caleb looked at Warren. Warren lowered his eyes. Tessa asked what suspended meant. The manager explained that there was a significant outstanding balance and several charges were under review. Caleb said there had to be a mistake. The manager said there was not. I looked at Warren. He looked like he had been waiting for this moment. I asked him whether the charges were his. He said no. Then he admitted that he had removed himself from financial responsibility for the account weeks earlier. Caleb stared at him. Warren said he had warned Caleb about his spending spending. Caleb said he thought the account was still available. Warren said access remained because Caleb never stopped using it. I asked why Judith had asked me to pay the bill. She said she was trying to prevent embarrassment. I asked whose. She did not answer. The manager looked at me and asked whether I had authorized any payment. I said no. He nodded. Judith then told him that I was family and that I would take care of it. I said I would not. She looked betrayed. Caleb leaned closer and said I did not understand what was at stake. I told him he had spent money that was not his. He said he was going to fix it. I asked how. He had no answer. Then Judith stood and told the manager that she had called the police because money had disappeared from a family account and she believed I had taken it. My entire body went cold. I asked her what she was talking about. She said she had evidence. Caleb looked at her in shock. Tessa whispered that Judith needed to stop. I stared at my mother and realized the accusation had nothing to do with a missing dinner payment. She had planned a second trap for me. Before I could ask another question, two officers entered the dining room. People at nearby tables turned toward us. Judith pointed directly at me. One officer asked whether I was Marissa. I said yes. I could feel every person nearby listening now. My mother had spent years teaching me that family reputation mattered more than feelings. Yet she had just put mine at risk in front of strangers. That hurt deeply. Then the country club manager placed a file on our table. He looked at me and said he knew exactly which financial investigation Judith was referring to. He opened the file and my name was printed across the first page. The officer asked what had been stolen. Judith said about $18,000 from a family account. I told him I had never had access to it. The officer asked for proof. Judith said I had been angry with the family and had recently asked Warren about money. Warren immediately said that was not true. He looked at Judith and told her to stop. Caleb said it was a family matter. The officer said a criminal accusation was not a family matter. Judith looked at Caleb. He shook his head. She admitted she had not seen me take anything. The officer said suspicion was not evidence. They asked whether I wanted to make a statement. I said I had never accessed the account. They took my information and left. Then the manager opened his file. He explained that he recognized my name from an old financial investigation involving one of the club's vendors. I had noticed reimbursement records that did not match the invoices and reported the inconsistency through the proper channel. Investigators later found a pattern of false charges. I had never told my family because I had simply done my job. Caleb had told our family I caused trouble at his workplace because I was jealous of his career. The manager said the club had reviewed its relationship with that vendor. He looked at Caleb and said the same pattern was now appearing in the membership records. Personal expenses were being described as business expenses and charges were being moved between categories. Some were approved under Caleb's access while Warren was still listed as the responsible member. The club had suspended the account because the records did not support Caleb's explanations. Caleb said he intended to reimburse everything. Philip asked why months had passed without meaningful repayment. Caleb said his promotion had been delayed financially. Tessa asked whether the raise had actually started. He looked away. His promotion was real, but the money had not arrived yet. He had been spending as if it had. Tessa asked how long he had been doing that. Caleb said he did not know. She said that was not an answer. I realized Judith had known more than she admitted. She had been trying to create someone who could absorb the first public consequence of Caleb's spending. I asked Judith why she called the police. She said she thought I would become frightened and agree to pay. She said she was trying to protect Caleb. I told her she had made me look like a thief. Warren closed his eyes. Caleb said he wanted one more month because he believed his clients would keep him afloat. I told him that was postponement. He became angry and said I had judged him. Tessa asked whether there were more debts. Caleb admitted there were credit cards and loans. When she asked about their house, he went silent. Judith began crying. I felt no satisfaction. Philip told Caleb that the club would provide the account records and made it clear that my name would not be placed on the balance. Then he apologized. I told him it was not his fault. For once someone was saying exactly what was true. Caleb asked if he could speak with me outside. I agreed. We walked to the parking area. He rubbed his face and said he had made mistakes. I told him he had made choices. He said he was scared. He asked me for the money. I said no. He said I had enough savings to help him survive until things improved. I told him that was exactly what everyone had been counting on. He asked whether I wanted him to lose his career. I told him I would not lose something for him. He said said I was his sister. I told him that did not mean carrying his consequences. He asked whether I would tell the police that Judith had misunderstood. I said I would tell them the truth. He finally understood. When I returned to the table, Tessa was waiting. She asked whether I knew about the financial investigation involving Caleb years earlier. I said I knew he had worked at that company, but I had never reported anything because of him. She told me Caleb had spent years saying I had ruined his career. She believed him. She asked Philip whether my report had been legitimate. He said the investigators had confirmed the irregularities. Tessa covered her mouth. Caleb did not deny it. The bigger betrayal was that the club charges were not the first time he had rewritten the truth. He had built part of his identity around making me the difficult sister so nobody would ask what he had done. I finally understood why my mother had always compared us. If I was the failure, then Caleb never had to explain why he needed help. If I was jealous, then my warnings could be dismissed. If I was selfish, then taking from me could be called family. Tessa left with her sister. Warren told me he was sorry. He admitted he had known Caleb was in trouble for months. I asked why he never warned me. He said he was ashamed. I told him his silence had put me in danger. He nodded. I drove home and cried in my driveway. They had been willing to sacrifice my reputation to protect their own. A few weeks later, Tessa moved out for a while. Caleb entered a repayment arrangement with the club and began working through his debts. His firm reviewed his expenses and removed him from some responsibilities. He kept his job but lost the promotion. Judith called and apologized for accusing me. I told her she could stop protecting people by sacrificing someone else. She became quiet. Months later, Caleb asked to meet me. He did not ask for money. He brought a list of his debts and a plan for paying them. He said he understood why I refused to rescue him. He asked whether I hated him. I said no. I hated what our family had become. We did not pretend it was fixed, but for the first time we spoke without performing. I still speak to my parents. I do not attend every gathering or explain my finances. I do not defend my choices when someone mocks them. I learned that boundaries are not punishments. Being quiet does not mean being powerless. Sometimes quiet means seeing what others are afraid to name. I walked into that country club expecting to be the embarrassing sister. I walked out knowing I did not need their approval to know my worth. My family did not become perfect, but the truth finally had room to exist. I did not need revenge. I needed my name back. I learned that you can love family and refuse to carry their lies. You can forgive someone and keep your distance. You can stop proving you are good by letting people use your goodness against you. I thought that dinner would expose my failure. Instead, it exposed the price my family was willing to make me pay for their image. I was finally free to leave the table. Subscribe for more stories.